Netflix's Daredevil, the most underrated, underappreciated, best TV series that you've probably even never heard of that airs on Netflix. There has been 3 seasons thus far, and I'm going to get right into it. Who is Daredevil? First off, Daredevil is a Marvel Comics hero created in the 1960s by creator Stan Lee. And he's sort of the B-movie character in the Marvel universe. Because when you think of Marvel, you think of Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man, the X-Men, the Avengers, etc., etc. He's sort of the B-movie character. But he's still quite an interesting character. And Daredevil operates in Hell's Kitchen, New York. He's a blind lawyer by day, yes, blind, and a vigilante by night. We soon find out that Matt Murdock, the title character, was blinded in a childhood accident with toxic waste, but also gave him supernatural abilities as far as hearing, senses, being able to sense an environment, and fighting better than even we could do. So it's just an amazing character. In the 1980s, Frank Miller, who's a well-known graphic novelist, did an origin tale on the Daredevil, and it was very interesting and very good origin tale. Now let's get into Netflix. Netflix and Marvel came together in 2010 to 2015-ish and wanted to start bringing some Marvel series to the small screen. So creator Stephen S. DeKnight brought Daredevil to Netflix. And boy, oh boy, what an awesome epic show. And I'm going to get right into it. So Daredevil came out in 2015 on Netflix, aired 13 episodes for season 1, then it went into season 2 and then season 3. Having said that, there was a problem between Marvel and Netflix, and I'll get into that in a bit. So let's get into the actual cast of this show. So who we have here is British actor Charlie Cox, very good actor, and he portrays Matt Murdock / Daredevil. And I'm going to get into that character. So Matt Murdock was raised by a single father by the name of Jack Murdock, who's a professional boxer in Hell's Kitchen. And they kind of scraped by. Like financially, they really, really struggled, the two of them, but they had a good connection. So young Matt Murdock would often help him with his wounds when he got back from a fight. And you saw a real touching father and son relationship here. Now, the way they air this in the TV series is they go through flashbacks throughout the episodes, which I thought is pretty cool. They just didn't spend the whole first episode telling the story. They would throw little tidbits in. So you'd see that relationship and how important it was to the character of young Matt Murdock. So what happens in this series is Matt Murdock is out for a walk in Hell's Kitchen, sees an elderly man just about to be hit by a vehicle. He kind of intervenes, jumps, and saves the old man. And essentially a vehicle collision occurs, toxic waste is spilled, and Matt Murdock is a victim of that. Instant blindness, obviously instant fear. He's a young boy around the age of 10 and is rushed to the local hospital. But he soon sees he's got these super senses, and they are scary to him. They're not something that he's happy to have, something that scares him. At the same time, his father's trying to console him, and they try to build that relationship about how he's going to deal with his blind son now. In the meantime, Jack Murdock's kind of fallen in with the mob. The mob wants Jack to throw fights, his boxing bouts, in order to make money gambling-wise. So Jack Murdock at one point refuses the mob's offer, and the mob basically threaten him in a nutshell. And he decides what he's going to do is he's going to win that fight, even though they want him to lose that fight. But he's going to bet all his money on himself and put into a secret trust for Matt Murdock, so Matt will have money at his hands there when he grows up. He doesn't want Matt to fight, fall in his footsteps. He wants Matt to get an education, use his brain instead of his fists. So unfortunately, Jack does end up going against the mob's wishes, wins the fight, and tragically, something bad happens to Jack, which forever changes young Matt. Matt is placed in an orphanage, and he grows up over the years, again, trying to adapt to his special skills. Along comes an elderly man named Stick, an interesting character. He's played by veteran actor Scott Glenn, and he comes along and starts training him. Now, Stick is blind as well, but he has some sort of special abilities as well, able to show him how to fight, how to listen to heartbeats. As a matter of fact, at one point, young Matt can tell if somebody walks by if they have a terminal illness just by the way their heart beats. So it's just amazing the abilities he has. Now we fast forward a few years later, and young Matt goes to law school. He becomes good friends with Foggy Nelson, another law school student, portrayed by Elden Henson. Does a really good job here. And Elden Henson used to be a young actor in the Mighty Ducks series from way back when. So they create a junior law firm in Hell's Kitchen, but they don't have any money. They start up. They've got like paper signs. They're kind of a mom and pop, attorneys at law. Nelson and Murdock, attorneys at law. And along comes another lady to assist them, by the name of Karen Page, who becomes very close friends with both characters, portrayed by Deborah and Woll. And they have a pretty good relationship, the three of them. It's quite cool to see. And the nice thing about this series is it's not episodic. So there's a huge storyline that goes over a period of season 1, and it kind of continues. Okay, we'll get into that. There's also another side character by the name of Claire Temple, portrayed by Rosario Dawson. She's a nurse. And this comes in handy because unexpectedly, Matt Murdock as Daredevil runs into her one evening when he's got some pretty serious injuries, and she basically helps him. And they develop a really good friendship there as well. So let's get into it. Matt Murdock, he's a lawyer during the day, and at night he dons a costume and he goes out and he beats on these bad guys. Now he does have a rule. He's not going to kill people, but he is going to beat them up and maim them pretty good. I will admit, it's a guilty pleasure. Now he doesn't have your typical superhero costume. He doesn't have tights on or anything like that. He's wearing full combat pants, black combat pants, police combat boots, like Under Armour shirt, and a black scarf that covers basically from his nose up. So there's no eye holes, which is kind of cool. I think that intimidates the bad guys. Like, how's this guy see? But of course, we know that he's blind anyway, so it's regardless. The fighting styles in this show are insane. The best I've ever seen. Tops any series I've ever seen. The CW came out with Arrow. That's a pretty decent show. This one tops it 100 times. The fight scenes here, the choreography of the fight scenes are just amazing. The fact he can flip around, the maneuvers he does, the moves he does, and they do it in what's called a one-shot, which is really cool. So it's similar to the movie Creed, where they'll go into a fight scenario and they don't yell cut. It's just continuous filming without stopping. And there's one scene where he goes to rescue a hostage from some bad Russian dudes, and he's able to walk in there and take on like 20, I lost count, maybe 20, 30 bad guys with all various moves. At the same time, it's realistic. He's getting hurt. He's also getting physically exhausted. You can see that in him. And even though he's physically exhausted, he starts to use some maneuvers while he's trying to rest to still beat on the bad guys. It's pretty cool. The other thing, too, is when he sustains injuries, he sustains injuries. You see it, and you see the extent of the injuries, and it's brutal. The scars he has, and he just doesn't heal overnight. His injury may carry on to the next episode. Like, it's very continuous that way. They keep a good continuity, a level continuity here, which I think is important. Now, let's get into the major villain arc here. As we all know in the Marvel Comics, there's a major villain by the name of the Kingpin. Very larger-than-life, kind of mob boss, huge, like 300-400 pounds type guy. Just a monster. His real name is Wilson Fisk. So we have Wilson Fisk in this show, and we have a really good actor by the name of Vincent D'Onofrio, who portrays Wilson Fisk / the Kingpin. Now, he's got a really good story arc here. They don't just throw him out there and say, oh, here he is. He's, flying under the radar, and it's a bit of a detective mystery movie to figure out who he is. And he has a backstory. He's not just your typical villain. He's got a traumatic childhood himself. And you see that. So the character development in this series is fantastic, top-notch. And you feel even for the bad guy. And, there's some interesting villains in this movie, and they're realistic villains. It's not your typical comic book movie. This is a comic book hero in the real world, Hell's Kitchen, New York. The other thing, too, is this does take place, actually, in the Avengers realm or world of Marvel when you look at the multiverses. And the reason being is there's a New York Bulletin newspaper frame that talks about the big battle in New York, referring to the Avengers movie. And then there's also mention very, very so often, doesn't happen too often, I should say, referring to Captain America, Iron Man, and etc. So we do know that this does exist in this world. But the difference here with Daredevil is that he's not here to save the world or save, universe or anything like that. He's grounded in Hell's Kitchen, New York. He's there to save the everyday person and rescue them, and he does the right thing. The other cool thing, there's many things to talk about with this character because he's so interesting, is when he interviews a potential client that he may defend because he's a defense lawyer. He can hear their heartbeat. He can tell if they're telling the truth or if they're lying. And I think that's really cool. Again, the story arc in this, it just keeps building and building. And I like what they've done in this series. It's similar to Batman Begins in my review there, where they throw little tidbits of his past in little clips throughout the series. They don't just do a one full episode of his childhood. They basically throw little tidbits here and there. And as you piece them together, you kind of get a better understanding for who he is and the character that he is. He is truly a good guy. But if you're a bad guy, holy smokes, it's just amazing watching him in action. The fight scenes, like I say, there's nothing like it. They are violent, but they don't apologize for it either. This is real violence. When you're fighting 10 mob guys or, a gang of villains, you can't just go in there and put their hands behind their back. And this guy's jumping around. He's going to battle with these guys. But again, he's not trying to kill them. That's the main thing here. He does believe in justice. So, it's just a fantastic series. And it's funny because whenever I talk about Daredevil, people go, oh, I didn't even know that was on Netflix. And I'm going, this is one of the best series. Like when I talk about my top 10 series of all time, this is one of them. And I give this series out of 1 to 10 an 11 by far. It's just so good. So let's get into what happened here. Netflix and Marvel are sort of parted ways because Disney comes along, as we know, and takes over Marvel. So this screws everything up. Now, not only is it screwed up for Daredevil, but there's been some spin-off shows that are quite good too. There's the character of Luke Cage. He gets a couple seasons. There's the character of Iron Fist. He's got a season as well. Jessica Jones, I think she had a couple seasons. And then they grouped them all together in a group called the Defenders, which is super cool. So Daredevil's in that group, and they have a 13, or maybe it was 10 episodes, sorry, in that particular show. But then it comes to an abrupt end because of the issues with Disney and all that stuff. So that became a huge disappointing factor when Daredevil was not renewed for season 4. I was going, what are you doing? This is like the best show on Netflix right now. The best show on TV, actually. The good news is the current Spider-Man film being filmed with Tom Holland returning as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. The rumor is Matt Murdock, Daredevil, portrayed by Charlie Cox, is in that movie as Matt Murdock, Peter Parker's potential lawyer. So I'm happy that they're bringing him back. Then I've heard another rumor, because Marvel now has, on their Marvel Studios, now has their own TV series such as WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, that they're bringing another series out. And I think it's linked to Hawkeye somehow. But in any event, from what I've heard, is they're bringing Matt Murdock and Daredevil back. The actress who plays Karen Page, I guess, recently shared a tweet or something on Instagram. I didn't see it, but I heard about it, essentially alluding to the fact that she may be coming back into this world as well. So I'm totally happy about that, because that's the one thing I thought Marvel had screwed up on when this transition happened, was you forgot about your hit character Daredevil here. You've got to do something with him. You got to build on this character. This is a great, great character. And I watched Falcon and Winter Soldier on Marvel, the Marvel Network there, or Disney, I should say, Disney Channel. And it was a good series. But honestly, when I compare the two, Daredevil's 100 times better. So it's like, what are you doing? This is a show you need to put on. Now, if they do put it on Disney Channel, I don't think they should tone down the violence. They should just give some warnings, because Daredevil's a brutal fighter, and he's a brawler when he gets in there and fights with these bad guys. And it is what it is. But I'm telling you right now, if you haven't seen Daredevil, seriously, check it out. It is one of my favorite TV series of all time. And I'll get into another review about Season 2 and Season 3, because more characters are introduced. Season 2, they bring Frank Castle / the Punisher, and who ends up getting his own series as well. That's a whole other subject. The Punisher, there's a lot of controversy over whether John Bernthal did a good job. I think he did a fantastic job. So anyways, tell me if you've seen the Daredevil. If you haven't, check it out. And once you have, leave some comments in there. You can thank me later. Great show. Can't, like I say, 11 out of 10. And highly recommend this show. Leave some comments below, subscribe to my channel, like it. All right, see you later.